So now we can actually start properly. Alright, thanks everyone for starting to check out my new video. Alright, thanks everyone for starting to check out my new video. There we go. That's why you always do the testing first, right? Okay, just wanted to start up by saying thanks to everyone who's been interacting with the YouTube channel. I've put up a lot of content there in the recent past, but I've had to stop because I had a computer failure essentially. Now I've rebuilt the computer and I'm just trying to get back into the flow of things. I've got a lot of people that are interested in the VR dev videos, which is great. I'm still just trying to struggle to get some clear space for my VR kits to be worked on there, but I'll be jumping back into that soon. And I'm also focusing a bit more on some of the deeper aspects of multiplayer development. So yeah, again, thanks for interacting. It's good to see a lot of people with questions and stuff, and hopefully I can answer them. Otherwise, I can put them towards future videos. So that's all great. Let's just get rid of that window there for a minute. Alright, so what I'm doing today is RPG Builder has brought out its 2.0 update, which is actually pretty good. So, I mean, the original RPG Builder was actually pretty cool. I spruiked it way back when it was coming out. I was really excited for it. Got into a little bit of dev with it, but was hitting a few brick walls, and then I was moving into the multiplayer space, and the system's just not built for multiplayer yet. RPG Builder 2.0 update has come out, and it's given it a lot more quality of life aspects, and it actually feels like a pretty cool little system that I wanted to play around with and even just get like a little basic demo going. But what I want to do first is I want to go into a little bit of preparation for a game. So when starting a new project, it's easy just to go like, oh yeah, I want to just try and do this, or I want to make this game, and then you jump straight into Unity, you put in all these things, and you'll get halfway through, but you'll lose what it was that you originally started for, or you'll just get yourself muddled up. And I do it all the time, but a lot of the time I'm just making like tiny test projects and stuff like that, like nothing that's too serious. But for this one here, it's actually good just to have even just like a basic guide that you can refer back to as you're moving along. So yeah, just wanted to showcase this sort of before I started even loading up the project, just to give you guys like a bit of an idea about some of the things that you might need to consider when you're starting on something new. So we'll just keep going through it. So we've got the overview here. So what I'm going to be talking about today is basically I'm going to bring up a couple of points. So we've got the aim, which is the aim of the complete game. So like, what's the purpose of your game? What are you expecting to get out of it? What do you want the game to be? Then you go through, we'll look at general plot elements. So that's when we're talking about like, how does the game progress? At what stages do you have to go through in order to complete your game or to achieve that aim that you've got? Then the gameplay mechanics. So what are the core mechanics that you actually need to focus on for your game to be fun to play, essentially, or to fit that aim that you're trying to achieve? And then we get into some of the more sort of detailed aspects of it. So the world building, that's when we're talking about the art aesthetic and what it's going to look like. The game elements, that's when we're talking about all sorts of things like, because it's an RPG today, we'll be talking about, like items and equipment, spells, what do you foresee being in your game to make up or compose into that world. And then we'll talk about the AI, and that's something new that's coming out with RPG Builder 2. There's some new changes that are coming to that, which are going to allow us to do some pretty cool stuff. But as we'll go through, let's start with the aim. So I want to say, what's the aim of the game? Like, what are we aiming to achieve? Are we trying to make a game that's just a linear plot line, so I tell a story and the players walk through it? Or are we trying to go for that open world experience where, the player just can go and explore and find a whole bunch of different stories? I've put it in Builder here because for this one here, I wanted to play around with the RPG Builder. It's actually kind of a mouthful when you go to say it. Anyway, so the RPG Builder 2 has come out with some expandable AI. So you're actually able to modify some of the AI elements itself to bring up your own thing. So what I wanted to do was I actually want to add in, as I've previously done with the easy build system integration, I wanted to add in the build your own sort of village, build your own town. But from that, I wanted the AI to actually interact with that town. So I'm going to have to build AI that will spawn with that. And I've actually come up with an idea that I want. So I'm just actually going to draw this out. So stay with me. So we've got player is a shaper. So basically the player is a shaper and you're able to forge your own realm using summoned creatures, and through that you can expand your abilities by crafting different research tables and that. So essentially it's kind of like an RTS. I don't know why I've got double I It's like an RTS where you will build buildings that will spawn AI creatures for you that will go and harvest and bring you more resources to build the buildings that you need to build to advance your character. And the idea is that you will, so you'll place constructions to spawn advance. So you'll place down these buildings, the harvester AI will go out and harvest the materials for you. Then you will place down the advanced constructions where they'll teach you how to gain new abilities or test stuff. And all the while you can actually run around the nearby area to collect fancy items or complete little side quests. But the main goal is to attack enemy fort and defeat big boss. Alright, so essentially there'll be another fort that'll be too hard to get into when you start the game, but as you advance you'll actually be able to beat each different part of the fortress, and you'll be able to lead an army of pets that you'll be able to spawn via your constructions to take that down. And that's the end of the game. So it's not a giant, huge open world exploration game. It's going to take you 50 hours. It's really got to be maybe an hour's worth of content, and that's a lot for an indie game dev to actually come up with. But if you slow the player down by having these constructions and having the harvesting flow and stuff like that, which we'll talk about when we do game mechanics, I'll go into it there. But essentially, yes, I'm looking for just a small game. It's only going to be mainly a demo. I'm not going for anything big, but I just wanted to explore what can be done with the AI in RPGB, but also go through what features are actually there off the bat. So that's our aim. So essentially I'm just using this to just sort of write down, okay, what is it that I'm actually trying to achieve? What is it that I want from this project, so that I don't go into it and go, oh yeah, this is cool, but maybe I can add this onto it, or maybe I can do that. This will keep me grounded. This will be like, is what I'm doing when I'm working on the project, is it actually working towards hitting these points here in my aim and achieving this what I want to achieve here. So so this will help keep you grounded. All right. So now we come to the general plot elements. So this is what I was talking about when it was like, okay, how are we going to get there? Like, what do we need to do in order to get there? Now, when you're doing a story game, this is probably a little bit easier because you can go like, okay, I want the characters to start here. I want them to go through this area. And then in the end, I want them to end up here, right? Now, we're doing an open world game, so it's not really like you can have a plot where it's, like it's going to tell us, all that sort of stuff. But we can at least sort of, simplify down. So we've got the start here. When it starts out, we might have like a little tutorial section. And plant your town square. So I call it a town square, but essentially it's just going to be the plot point for where we're actually going to build our town from. So we can we'll talk about this in the game mechanics as to whether we want that to be anywhere in the game world or whether we actually have a specific section of the map that we're going to make where we can build that, and we'll talk about that in the game mechanics, which is next. But for now, essentially, at the start of the game, you're going to learn how to play the game, and then you're going to begin your quest to increase your powers, right? So then the mid-game is, of course, the build and expand. So this is where we're going to grow in power. So essentially, we'll be doing we'll be there working towards trying to get our town and our own little sort of home area to grow in power. So we're going to advance our skills. We might run around the local area to do a couple of quests and things like that to find special items, all that, just so we can build and advance our character. And then in the end, we're going to storm the enemy castle. So, and then kill boss. And that's our end game. So that's what we do is we learn how to play the game, then we play the game by increasing ourselves up to the point where we can go and do the end game, which is storm the enemy castle and kill the boss. So very generalized, but this, as well as the aim, I've sort of put it in here. I mean, it's sort of the same thing when we're looking at it, but that's because we're going for that open world design. But essentially, yeah, this is like just explaining how we're going to go through to achieve that aim. Yeah, I don't think there's anything much more to say about that. Again, if you've got a story, you'll actually have probably a bit more expanded section here. And if you have like a branching story, you might have like, be here or they could go here. You can dot it out. But essentially, if you jot down your ideas, it really helps you and to guide you when you're developing different levels in your game, different areas, things like that, you can always refer to what is it that I want the players to experience when they're in here. This is a bit more of an open-ended style, so that's fine. All right, gameplay mechanics. So this is where I've said that we're going to put a few things in, but essentially we need to think about what are the core mechanics that we're actually going to have in our game in order to achieve that aim of, like, you know, again, the aim is we're going to make a bunch of stuff and then we're going to fight a boss. So exploration, not a big one for this. It is going to be like, you know, like an open play field where you can go anywhere, but it doesn't have to be like a huge game, and it's not like as though you have to really explore in order to unlock everything that you need. It's essentially you are staying in one sort of in one location where you're, you know, constructing your thing. So we are probably going to get rid of exploration as a main mechanic. It is there, but it's not going to be the main point that we need to focus on, just because it doesn't, you know, it's not necessary in order to complete this aim. It is something fun to have, but it's just not a core mechanic that we're going to focus on. So location centric, that's when we're going to be focused on that one area that we're really focusing on trying to build up our stuff. So we've got to protect our city. So what does that actually mean? So all right, location centric, we can I don't want to say craft world around it, but essentially it's like, you know, control an area, defend against enemies. So we might even have a point in there where we can go, okay, so you own this area, now you've got to build it up, but while you're building it up, there's, you know, if there's nothing stopping you, it will be really quick to get through. So we might end up being a thing where we actually throw in part of the mechanic there is that you do actually have to defend against waves of enemies. So you can think Valheim does it. When you set up a castle or a plot of land and you start building upon it, every now and then you'll have, like, you know, the forest comes alive and it will target that area. So that's the mechanic there. You can sort of, you know, you can mimic that essentially by having, like, okay, well, we know where the plot point is, so every X amount of days in game, as RPGB 2 has a day-night cycle now, which is actually really great, because you can schedule things to it. So we can actually have that every couple of days. It'll be a horde of enemies of a certain type that will flow towards your base, and you have to protect it. So that means that you have to have, like, you know, guards, or you have to have enough combat skill to be able to defend it. Otherwise, you may lose some of your buildings and have to reconstruct, that sort of thing. So that's all about, like, you know, controlling the pace of the player, which is like an interesting. I don't know whether that's really mechanic or a control. So. I'm just going to call it a mechanic, but technically it's more of like a control, because you go, okay, the gameplay mechanics are, you know, what the player can use in order to advance themselves into the game, and what they have to play through to get there. And a control is, how do we limit the player, or how do we basically shoehorn the player down a particular path? What controls can we put on them in order to keep them going along the way that we want them to go along? So that would essentially be a control where we go, okay, we're going to throw waves of enemies at them so that we're forcing them to bother with their main defences and with their main town, and not being out and exploring all the time because we need them at home to defend. So that would be a control. All right, moving on from that anyway. So combat or story. So yeah, this is one that you got to think of, like, okay, like, what do I really want to support? Do I really want to have, like, a really good, strong narrative? And it doesn't really matter that the combat might not be, you know, like the best combat that's ever been in a video game. Or is it that I actually want people to really enjoy the combat, and the story becomes like a secondary thing to that? Like, you know, what do I want to strengthen? Obviously, you can have games that have good combat and good story. You've got a lot of the Assassin's Creed ones are actually quite fun, and do have an enjoyable plot line. At least up until like 3, I think. I can't remember. But this is an indie project, so we're really not going to put in a huge amount of effort. And plus, because of the story, I don't really have much need for a story, other than the fact that you are sort of, like, you know, creating a bunch of monsters to go and attack a place. Like I'm just making a demo. I'm not making a full game here. So combat will be one of mine, and how we're going to achieve that, we're going to have to look at the actual, do we want action combat? Is it just going to be tab targeted and then you just press the number 1s and 2s or whatever? I don't really like that. I don't find that fun. I prefer the action combat, but I mean, how deep can we get with action combat? I think RPGB has sort of like a mix of those. So it is the tab targeted style, and you can use it that way, but there is also some element of action combat. You can actually make the controls be so, like, your left click does your default strike, and you can, like, you have a cooldown on it, but you can just spam click and make it like a little Diablo clone there. But it's not like, press X, Y, Z for a combo, that sort of thing, which would be pretty cool. I did actually like that in the Conan MMO, but that's not what we're dealing with here. So yes, I want a bit of action-y combat. I want a collection of spells that you can sort of, you can actually pick a path in spells, or like, I want this spell, this spell, and this spell. It's not going to lock you into a skill tree. It's just, you just pick the different types of spells that you think will help you along the way you play. So yeah, we'll do that. And then other than that, I don't really want to say much more of that, but essentially we've got, so location centric and combat. They're the sort of core mechanics that I want to try and construction, I suppose, because we are going to be constructing. So construction and colony management / RTS. So what I'm actually going for is, I do like the idea of like the colony management style, or the colony genre, where it's got, like, every character's got a little name and stuff like that. That's a very advanced system, and it's going to take a lot longer to implement that. I'm actually working on a system like that at the moment for my MMO, but for the RPGB system, I'm really going to go for more of an RTS slant on that one. So rather than have, like, the named characters or whatever, I'm going to construct a building that allows me to make these little little harvester bugs that will go out and collect the resources I need to build the other structures I need to spawn pets that I can use for other jobs, so, like, guarding or attacking and stuff like that. It's really combat focused, so actually I'll put in that there. Combat focus. So yeah, rather than actually, like, try and build a thriving town with a little economy and stuff like that, it's going to be, it's an RTS. I'm building structures to create an army to go and destroy the enemy structures, and that's what I want to follow on from that. All right, so moving through, let's go to world building. So when I'm talking about world building, there's so much that you can do with world building. Like, you can sculpt terrains, you can do all sorts of things like that, but really at this stage, all I want to do is just really sort of plot out what I want. So the main thing here is the aesthetic. So normally this can change while you're doing the development, or this can be done a little bit later in the development. You really can just, like, you can have cubes and stuff like that as you're blocking out stuff and you're trying to develop your little prototype. But in the end, you really want to lock down an aesthetic, because the way that it stands now, aesthetic is everything. Like, it will control a lot of what you do in your game. You can think, like, oh yeah, I want to have a low poly game, and it's like, sure, that can be any genre, but in the end you end up sort of, you're hampering yourself around certain things. Like, you can't have a super deep plot driven game in low poly, because you think of something like The Witcher 3. If all that was low poly, that would end up being really weird.